This is going to be a quick video showing you how to take apart one of these watches. So we've got a few tools here. We got a flat tip screwdriver, a small Phillips, and an X-Acto knife. The flat tip screwdriver has been modified. It's just a regular Craftsman screwdriver, but I rubbed it on the concrete on both sides and sharpened it up. And the reason why I did that is because in order to work on one of these watches, you have to get this screwdriver into this little slot right here. So you find the little slot that's in the back plate of your watch, okay, and it's very narrow. Hold the watch on this side, and then push this in, and then you push your hands together, and you turn the screwdriver just like that. You hear that little pop? I just basically pushed in and I rotated at the same time, okay? That little pop means that you're clear. Now don't just yank the back plate off because there's a battery with wires. So you look at it very carefully. That's what it looks like. You kind of get an idea where the wires are going. And if you're replacing your battery, then this is basically all you need to do is just cut these two wires right here from the circuit board. Don't cut them close to the circuit board. Cut them way up here next to the bad battery. Cut, and then take the battery out and then solder a new battery in if you were doing that. Another thing you can do at this point is you can remove the circuit board, which will allow you to replace this microSD card. If you want to go to a bigger microSD card, you can pull this out. But in order to get this card out, you have to remove this board. There's not enough clearance to get the card out, just like it is. So you have to take out a couple screws. Sometimes these circuit boards have hot glue put in various places, and you just have to kind of pry the hot glue out. But luckily, hopefully, you'll have screws in your circuit board. Okay, so once you pull this out, what you do is you kind of keep this all together and kind of flip it over. Okay, you don't want to be bending these wires too much. If you go back and forth, if you do that like 10 times, those wires are probably going to break because they're very fine wires. So kind of keep it all together. Okay, so now at this point, if you wanted to, if you're just replacing the card, you would just get some of this sticker stuff off of here, and then, boom, just gently pull the card out, just like that. Be careful not to press too hard against that wire. Okay, you would just slide it out like that. Maybe remove this silly quality control sticker here, and then get your new card. Like if you want to go with the brand name card, see this one is this one's just generic. But if you want to put a brand name in, like a SanDisk. So now don't ask me about replacing these batteries. I don't know where to get them. I know that I've seen them online occasionally. You can maybe write the manufacturer or write another supplier that has these batteries on hand. I don't have access to these. I have a couple of them available at any given time, but otherwise I just simply don't have access to them. A real quick word about these micro switches. These are the micro switches that are actually connected to the buttons that you use to press out here. So you've got this button out here. Okay, here's a button out right here and right here. And if you look, you can see how there's got little knobs in there and they're pushing in. Okay, and they push on these micro switches. These micro switches are extremely delicate. You can hear it clicking when I press on it. They're very delicate. That's why you don't want to be wrenching on these buttons when you're operating your device, because you can end up with a crushed button. If you get a crushed button, you can't fix it. You're toast, and you basically just need a new watch. Okay, so now that these screws are out, we'll set those aside. 2 screws, they look like that, don't lose them. Okay, the next step is to pull this plastic retainer out. It's very easy. This is extremely easy to do. Just use an X-Acto knife and look for a good area, like say right here. And just use some pressure, just pop it right out. It doesn't matter, you can throw it like that because there's only one way it goes back in. And that is when this slot right here is lined up with the time set knob. Okay, so it has to be lined up with this. So it can only go in one way, okay? Just like that. It can't go in like this. And then obviously don't put it in like that. Okay, so you set that aside. The next thing you can do at this point is you can replace your battery, your watch battery. Now the camera, the Spy watch has 2 batteries. It has this rechargeable one, which powers this camera and this circuit board, okay? And this wire that comes down here just leads down to the audio mic. So this isn't any part, this is part of this whole camera operation. This piece right here is what actually powers the clock hands. So when you see the clock hands moving, That's what this entire piece operates. And the battery that controls it is this one right here. It's a 3 volt. I believe it's a, I can't remember how many volts it is. I'll put that in the video. But anyway, in order to get this out, there's various designs on this, but basically you just use a dull X-Acto knife and you pry apart a little tab, and that allows you to get the battery right out. And then you can test it with a voltmeter. These are actually 1.55 volt batteries, and a brand new one will read about 1.59 or so. So this one's fine, it's working, there's no issues with it, so I'm going to put it back in. In order to put it back in, you just kind of set it in that way, and then you put a little pressure on it, and it should go back in. Now sometimes you have to replace the whole entire clock. If you need to get the clock face out, I'm just going to remove that just to show you how easy it is, because sometimes people want to replace their whole entire case. So in order to do that, we need one more tool. We need a pair of pliers. Okay, so this is a big old massive pair of pliers, needle nose. They don't need to be this big, but I like big ones because they grip better, okay? So all you do is you need to hold on to that threaded part right there with these pliers. So we're just going to grip that and squeeze, and then we're going to, you can kind of move this back and forth a little bit if you need to grasp onto this little knob. So you squeeze the pliers down really hard, and then you go, I'm not squeezing hard enough, I gotta go a little bit harder, and then you unscrew counterclockwise, and they've got thread lock on there. You don't necessarily have to put thread lock back on when you put it back together again. Be really careful that you don't damage the hands, okay, when you're messing with this. If you look really carefully, you can see that there's a little bit of thread lock in the end, okay? So if you ever have to replace your whole entire analog face, that's how you would do that. That's how you would get it out. Now, one more thing I may as well show you is if you have to remove your speaker. This is probably one of the most delicate operations. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to remove the audio cap. Okay, take that out. And if you look in there, you've got your actual speaker in there. Okay, be very careful. I'm going to use a dull X-Acto blade, and I'm going to go just on the edge. I'm not going to go in the center, but I'm going to go on the edge. You can try to pry out this way, but I've never had much luck with that because there's like a rubber grommet that goes around it. We can kind of try a little bit. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Okay, so I got it out that way. Sometimes it'll just come right out, and if not, if you can't get it out easily that way, then you would just use an X-Acto knife to push on the edges of this thing while it's in the slot in order to get it out. Okay, so now we've got all the components out. This thing's completely bare, and so this is for people like if you need to replace the case, if something happens to your watch, if you damage it or break the glass or do something else, and you end up with a new case. Okay, so now I'm going to put everything back together. Let's go like this, and the first thing we're putting in is the clock. Okay, clock only goes in a certain way. You can mess with it to make sure it's still working, so let's press it in. It should start ticking. There it goes. Okay, we'll pull it back out again because it's a little bit easier to work on when this post is long. Okay, so basically you just look for this little tiny hole. Make sure it goes in the right way. You can kind of drop it in there like that. It won't hurt it. And then you grab the knob. And I'm not even going to put more thread lock on this because the existing thread lock kind of gives it enough of enough to grip on, even though it's dry. This can be a little tricky. Just kind of hold it with the pliers and then start screwing on. And it's already on there. Boom, that's done. That's how easy it is to get a clock back in. Okay, and then the next thing you want to do is put in the audio mic. That's the next thing you want to do. You might be tempted to put this black ring in first. Don't do it, because I guarantee you're probably going to have to pull it right back out again. Okay, because it's kind of difficult to put this audio mic in while this black ring is still in. Okay, so I'm looking for the audio mic hole, and it's this one right here. Okay, so we're just going to rotate. And to get this in, we're just going to use the back part of our screwdriver, just the flat part of our flat tip screwdriver. Kind of go like this. Be gentle with this because there's leads on the back, and if you mess those up, well, you won't have sound anymore. So be very gentle. You kind of press that in. That's how they do it at the factory. Some guy sits there and presses these in. So do it the same way. I guarantee you there's not robots putting these things together. Okay, once that's in, then you can take this. Again, the slot aligns with the time set. So get your wires kind of out of the way. Put this in. And make sure this center clock piece is lined up. If it's not going in, you're going to have to make sure the center piece is lined up. Just kind of fudge it around. And once this drops in, everything should be lined up for assembly. That's what this black ring does. It lines everything up for assembly. It keeps your watch right in the right spot. Now, one thing you might want to do really quick is make sure you can still pull this knob out and set the time. And then push it back in. Make sure it starts ticking. If it doesn't start ticking, you need to unscrew this knob from the threaded part a little bit to give it more room, because it's not going in all the way. That means you need to back it off just a little bit. That way when you push it in, the clock will start ticking again. Okay, try not to move these wires around too much. Now we're going to go with putting the camera in. It's pretty easy to see. The camera is right there, so obviously it goes right there. Make sure these wires stay out of the way of the infrared LEDs, which are going to get lined back up with those holes. So there's some holes in there that the IR LEDs have to line up with. If it doesn't go in the first time, just kind of move it around. This looks like it's going to go right in. Kind of put a little bit of, mild pressure on it. I can tell that's already in there. It's going good. Okay, so once that's in there, just take your 2 screws, one at a time. Tiny little Phillips screwdriver. Just pick a hole. They'll drop down in most of the way, and then you simply screw them very gently until you feel a little bit of resistance. Don't tighten these things down. Don't go stripping your threads in the plastic, black plastic set ring. Okay, so just drop it in there and then start screwing. If you miss the hole somehow, just back it out, try again. Very mild pressure, hardly any pressure. You just need a little bit to hold that in. Okay, the last part is you kind of want to get an idea where the battery's going to end up. You don't want to be moving these wires around all over the place. Okay, so you can kind of generally see that the wires are going to end up right about there. Okay, the next thing you need to do is put the battery into the back plate. And you put the battery in the back plate by putting the wired end in first. Make sure the end with the wires, the yellow wire ends, go in first, okay? Then once that's in, then you can start working these 2 edges and put the other parts in, okay? So you just kind of, a little bit of pressure on it. If it doesn't go in right away, pull it out, try again. There it goes, it's snapped in. So once that's in, it basically kind of holds, okay? And then you just gently, without putting any pressure on those internal wires, put this together. Okay, and then you can kind of snap with your fingers. You can press with your fingers if you want. And then this one went in pretty easily. Sometimes they don't go in very easily. If it doesn't go in all the way, then press with like the heel of your hand on the edges. Don't press in the center. If you press in the center of this watch face, you'll shatter that glass. Okay, so press on the edges and push like this inside, okay? And that's it. I hope you liked the video.